guys, welcome to Workshop 4. Today we are going to be looking at creating your own signature or your own tag in our graffiti arts workshops that we're doing. So this is going to be a lot more about creating what we would call a hand style, coming up with a name that you like, a name that you want to use, and possibly some of the ways to make that name a bit more interesting and exciting. Now, we do this because we want this to be a signature that goes along with our work. Obviously, what we're not encouraging is for people to go out and start writing their tags on anything where they're not supposed to. So this is all just about you understanding a part of our of graffiti culture, rather than us saying it's cool to have a tag and go and write it all over your local area. Stay to the places where you're involved, create your name because it's a good thing to have in graffiti terms, but let's just keep it all like safe and keep everything respectful. That's our ideas. So with a tag, what you're looking for is a word that is not much longer than 5 or 6 letters. You want your tag to be punchy, to the point, snappy. So my tag, for example, is this. Gyro. So all I'm trying to do is make sure I can do it nice and quick, sign my work, and do what I want to do. So I'd say the same thing for you guys. It can be your name, but ideally you want to think of a word that's exciting, a word that sort of like inspires some sort of like idea in you. And then a lot of graffiti writers are putting things like a letter after it. For example, they might put their street number or their house number, something like that. So, think about those words that kind of have a bit of power to them. So for example, a word like smash. It has a lot of power to it straight away. You can kind of, I don't know, it just immediately has like a good sort of impact on it. Now, when you're doing your tag, you can really mess around with uppercase and lowercase letters. So don't feel like you've got to do everything the same. One letter can be small, next one can be lowercase. The S's can be 2 different sizes, and that can be a lowercase h. There's no real tricks. But you're always looking for that balance. You want everything to try and stay as balanced as possible. So I'm always thinking about what additions I can add to my letters. What can I do? What can I add to it? Maybe I'm going to add some random letters for you, like a house number, or maybe you want to be the first person to ever do your tag. A lot of tags have already been used, so trying to find an original name is really, really important as well. You want to really think about like what word's not been done, or is it like an interesting word? So like you want your tag to stand out next to everyone else's so that everyone remembers your name. So that was like the interesting thing about somebody like Banksy, because no one had a name like that before him, but there'd been a lot of people who'd written a word like craze. There'd been about 100 guys that wrote the word craze because the letters are awesome. But no one had written the word about. And I saw that tag the other day, and immediately that just struck me, and it stood out so much more than other people's tags. And it's about thinking about which type of pen you're going to use. So you can see that's just a few examples of some tags and some hand styles. But a good thing to do is just really think about, which letters kind of look the best and look good. So for example, double letters are quite tricky. So like 2 L's in a tag can be quite tricky, for example. It's not impossible, but an L to an L, it's just not the most exciting combination, But even just adding that on the end just makes it automatically more balanced. And then when we're using different pens, you just want to be thinking about that. And my recommendation with tagging, like anything else, is just really try to practice that full alphabet and kind of keep that working. So practice every letter, put them next to each other. Just again and again and again. I know it sounds boring, but the more time you spend just practicing letter shapes, that sort of thing, the more you'll come up with a name. Straight away we start to sort of shape up an interesting looking alphabet. This is like a classic New York hand style. A lot of people, when I meet them when they're starting out doing graffiti, they think they've got to like really over decorate their tag. And there is good ways to decorate a tag and add things to it. But what I see a lot of people do is kind of like I'm going to take the word smash again. So they'll overlap their letters and then they'll add a squiggle underneath, and then they'll put a crown on top, and then they'll put a star next to it, and then they'll put something this. And if you were kind of going back, you wouldn't be able to read that really. You know, you want to be thinking about spacing everything out, and absolutely you can add things. So straight away I've added something on my S there. You can put something there. You can mess about with your letters for sure. You can add more, you can add different bits that come off. You know, there is all sorts of cool things to put next to it. But again, it's like something I talked about in the other workshops. It's this idea of not losing the integrity of the letter is really important. So when I'm doing mine, I'm looking at I want my letters to have some flow. So I'm flowing from one letter to another there. And then I am going to add things in addition. But I want it to be as kind of quick as possible. And a bit like a signature, you want it to kind of just go without moving your hand too much. So the more you can get something with a bit of flow, the better that'll be. And remember, this is just your signature, it's personal to you. So add the things you want to add, do the tricks you want to do. Now obviously you get different types of marker pens, so it's quite important to know which sort of pen you have to get things working. So for example, if you've got a bullet pen, so a pen that just has a bullet tip like this, it's just round, then that's just going to give you a very even, bold tagline or like word line. But if you've got a chisel tip or a calligraphy pen, a pen like this, where it's got that angle, it's got that straight edge, then you've really got to think about which way you're holding that pen. Because if you go the wrong way, you get a thin line, and then the other way you'll get a thick line. You can start using that stuff to your advantage. You can also start adding some of those calligraphy effects or chiseled effects. Just give it a really nice extra dimension to what you're doing. Now if you ask like the public about graffiti and then they see huge colourful graffiti artworks, they'll think that's like the hardest thing to do in graffiti. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that learning how to do a proper tag is by far and away the most respected part of our subculture. It's the thing that we find most difficult to create and to do well. And actually creating some of those big colourful graffitis you see can actually be simpler than somebody having just a really strong and good hand style. For us, this is like the pinnacle of graffiti, is this sort of idea that someone can just have almost like a perfect signature. And like, I guess some of the guys I would look at if I was looking at sort of good tags is I would look at somebody like Twister or Twist One, he writes. So if you type Twist One graffiti into Google, you'll see one of the sort of masters of that sort of thing. And then there's a guy called Revoke, which is REVOK. If you type his graffiti in as well, just like a really beautiful hand style and such lovely letters to work with. You know, a K and an R are just ideal for a tag. I can't really explain why, but there's something about the balance of the letters that just works so nicely with that sort of thing. Similar with a tag like twist. It's just got such a lovely balance of letters compared to, say, a word like this. It's just so much more clumsy, so much more difficult to tag. Someone still writes it, so it's already been used, but I don't know. It's nice to choose a word that kind of feels like you can do something positive with. So in graffiti art, one of the main things that it's important to kind of get if you're wanting to start out in this art form is, yes, you need to have a good tag, you need to have good letters, and then we also have a thing like called a simple or a throw up, and they're the three sort of, I guess, most important things that you learn to do in your graffiti career or when you're learning. So you start out with practicing your tag and your signature, you practice your throw up, and you practice your kind of piecing letters. So I'm going to show you all three of those just simply with the same set of letters, just so you get a little idea about what I'm talking about. So I'm going to use my tag for that and just start out with tag, and then I'm going to do throw up, and then I'm going to do like a piece, which should just be like a basic piece. And like, none of these is more important than the other, but there's a little bit to it about when this stuff's done in public. So a tag, again, is your signature, it's your classic hand style. So my tag is gyro. And that's just my quick 5-10 second thing. It doesn't take me long to do at all, and that generally always stays the same. Then for a throw up, it's basically like almost like my bubble letters. I'm just going to grab a Sharpie. So again, I've got my J, I've got my I, so it's J, I, R, O, E. And I'm doing the same thing with my throw up. So it's just my really simple bubble letters, J, I, R, O, E. So again, that's just my super simple throw up that, like, it just takes a bit of practice, takes a bit of learning. And then my piece, so you can see sort of simple tag, simple throw up, and then my I'm just going to do some simple piecing letters again, and you'll see that this has kind of informed this, which will inform the next thing I do as well. And then my piecing letters, more complicated, and that's when you start getting into the sort of graffiti lettering that you see quite a lot. So when you start adding things in addition, you start thinking about adding stuff to the letters, and already, even though I'm only 2 letters in, this has taken longer to create than the other 2 things. So this is when you've got a bit more time, you're going to use more colour, you're going to think about it a bit more. And this is where you know, on all 3 of these, you really try and come at it with your own style. But on this, I'm going to do the stuff like we talked about in the earlier workshops. So I'm adding 3D. Maybe I'm adding. So I've already got, you can see just from straight away, just so much less complicated and quick signature. Slightly more complicated filled in letters that you might do with like one colour with a spray can, right the way through to something that's going to take a bit longer to create. It's going to be a bit more complicated. And for me, in my style of graffiti, this is the stuff I like to do the most, is the more complicated lettering. Just a bit more dynamic, a bit more exciting. And just like to put like stuff in the backgrounds, like clouds, all the blocks coming off, this sort of stuff. Little halos and things. This is where you really start to embellish and add more detail. But to say you're a true graffiti artist, you don't get to jump the queue. So to get respect off your peers, to the other people to respect you and who are other graffiti writers, they're going to want to see that you can do your tag well. They're going to want to see that you can do and handle doing your throw up well. And they're going to want to see that your letter styles are good enough too. And if any one of those is missing, you're probably not going to get the respect that you deserve, really. So you've got to try and work at all of them, at all of the different things, even adding things like characters and stuff to be a true all-rounder, to be kind of good at the art form. That's the stuff you're looking for. And to do that, it's just practice, practice, practice. I've practiced each one of these things. I've practiced my tag for thousands and thousands of hours. I've practiced my throw up for thousands and thousands of hours. Same with my graffiti lettering as well. Not one of those have I skipped any time on it. That's the only way to really master anything, whether that's football, tennis, the violin, whatever it might be. It's just got to be thousands of hours of practice and just sitting there and having a love for sketching or drawing or just practicing away. So yeah, no one unfortunately gets to jump the queue on that. Okay guys, when I'm doing a lot of my graffiti art workshops with young people and different people, they're always asking me, how can you do half decent bubble letters? Just like kind of simple, bold letters. So I just thought I'd show you a very quick like bubble alphabet, just to give you some ideas. A lot of the other graffiti that I've shown you has been quite sharp, quite complicated. And this is just that idea of how can you take a simple letter and just kind of make it a bit, just a bit bubbly and a bit fun. So I'm just going to do that alphabet for you guys now. Same principles apply really. You just want everything to be nice and even. You want the spacing and the proportions of the letters. Just kind of space up well. But you can see straight away these are just much more fun, much more simple, just a bit more easy, not as complicated to draw. Sort of like balloon letters, I suppose. But I think they still have that kind of graffiti nature to them. I'll be able to squeeze more on one page. Hoping so. X's are always pretty hard. So again, just a very, very simple bubble lettering alphabet. You know, that can just be as much fun as anything else that you do, and it's just like nice and simple, really easy to just sort of like practice and practice at, and you start to get somewhere. And remember, these can all have 3D on too. You can still add all of those effects like you've been learning in the other workshops, whether that's putting a 3D on the letters, whether that's putting little lines and cracks, you know, whether that's putting little movement lines on, drips coming off. All of that stuff can still be done to these letters to make them look really, really fun and interesting. So yeah, definitely suggest go home and just try practicing your tags, practicing your throw up and bubble letters, practicing your simple piecing letters, and just keep scribbling away. And you know, it might be a good idea to maybe do that on a tablet or on an Etch-a-Sketch or on a whiteboard if you've got something like that, because then you use a lot less paper and maybe save some of the rainforests a little bit. But it's just a lot of fun to just keep sketching and sketching away. Thanks guys, I hope that was helpful. I hope it kind of taught you some stuff about our culture and about what we do and why we do the different bits of art that you see when you see graffiti. And yeah, I'll see you for the next workshop. Coming up in the next workshop, we're going to be looking at some of the common mistakes that people make when they're practicing and sketching graffiti. And we'll go through some of them just to try and help you solve that so you don't make the same mistakes twice. Thanks guys.